Hi there, meteorologist Ed Valley here, taking a look at the long range commentary to wrap the week. It is November 19th. It is about 10 a.m. Eastern Time, and we're taking a look here not only at the Thanksgiving week forecast, but the end of November and opening to December. Some volatility is arising here that we need to discuss. So, weather-wise, this weekend we do have a fast-moving storm system moving through the country here Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. That'll bring some rain and colder temperatures to the eastern U.S. here to start next week. And behind that system, you get your we call it storm-induced cold. We get, when these storms develop, right, it allows for, as the low pressure forms, warm comes ahead of it, and then cold develops behind it as the low pressure strengthens. And that's what we're going to be seeing here as we head into early next week. However, there is some volatility even next week. There's going to be some ups and downs here with another storm system possible here as we get towards the end of next week. And the overall regime here favors the coldest risk versus normal north and east. So if you're down in the southwest or the southern plains or even along the southern Gulf Coast, compared to normal, the strongest cold is going to be felt up north. And you look at the next 10 days as a whole, and I'll kind of show you what I mean here. There it is. So you got kind of two features here we're watching. This cold in the eastern U.S., a lot of this is being helped by a block near Greenland that's developing, which we'll discuss here in a minute. But also you got a pretty big ridge of high pressure in the west, and that's keeping the plains in the southwest generally pretty mild through the rest of November. These are 10-day anomalies from today through the 29th. So you kind of get the idea of what's coming. Now, the thing that's tough about this is twofold. There's a block that's going to be developing near Greenland. That's a pretty high confidence forecast, and that's going to allow for some colder risk, especially east and north, to end November. But at the same time, I made a joke on Wednesday's video. I called it a North American battle royale. We have the Greenland block here, but our pattern near Alaska is not great, if we're being completely transparent here, if you are looking for colder risk. Now, this pattern to me is a stormy one in New England. It's a stormy one along the East Coast with this block in place. But with this Pacific pattern the way it is, I think we have to be open to volatility and ups and downs here, especially in the western and central United States. And by day 10, you can kind of see what we're talking about. The positioning of things in the northern latitudes has not changed. This is around after Thanksgiving, that weekend. And what we're seeing here is this block in Greenland, but also, again, the unfavorable Alaska pattern. And at the same time, we're seeing a ridge start to poke up from California and get into western North America, which downstream forces a trough, which would obviously be a colder pattern. But the differences arise in the 11 to 15 day on the GFS and the European model. So you look at the two around day 10, very similar. Euro, GFS, ridge west, trough east, and then you kind of got this dipole with the block near Greenland and then the lower heights near Alaska. Great. But watch what happens by day 12. The GFS is dropping a trough into the Pacific Northwest while the European keeps that ridge hunkered in place. That's a difference, and that's going to lead to big changes in the 11 to 15 day. By day 15, you notice the European still holding on to the western ridge, and that would obviously force a downstream trough. But at the same token, look at our blocking. It's vacated the northern latitudes near Greenland and near Alaska. We do have a western Pacific Oscillation, WPO ridge developing in the Aleutians. But again, this would still be a colder look, but you look at the day 15 anomalies, it's near normal east, it's still very warm west. This is not a strong nationally focused demand look. It's just not. I mean, it's not warm by any means, but it's not as impressive as it is earlier in the period, say day 7 through 10 and even 11 and 12. You see all this warmth in the western and northern U.S. Now, the GFS around this same time, as this trough dips into the west, you can imagine that the warmth would overspread the central and eastern U.S., and that's what the model is doing. Now, is this model correct? It's way too early to say, but to me, my professional opinion is that we're starting to see the volatility rear its head. And even on the Canadian model, you notice the Canadian and the European are pretty damn similar here around day 10. Here's the Euro, Here's the Canadian, almost identical, right? But again, this GFS for now seems to be an outlier, but it has been performing fairly well looking at the upper height verification. So, I mean, this would be a very bearish look. It would be a very a warm look. And for now, it is the outlier. But my job is not to tell you how the forecast can go right. It's how the forecast can go wrong, right? That's my job. My job is to identify risk and present it to you. And this is what we're seeing around the first few days of December. So through about the 28th, it's a chilly pattern. But after that, into the turn of the month here, we have to be wary of this changing pattern. But again, it's still early. But looking at all of the models, looking at the NAO, this is the blocking scheme. Negative, more blocking, positive, less. And what do we see? We see a unanimous trend positive here into the first few days of December. Now, looking at the EPO, which is the Alaska teleconnection, you notice a pretty positive look. And initially here for Thanksgiving week, we have the help of the negative NAO that allows this colder pattern to still occur. But if we are seeing a positive EPO and a positive NAO here in early December, that would open the door for additional, at least warmer risk, right? So there's a lot happening here. And again, the PNA ridge in the west is also diminishing a little bit here as we head into the beginning of December. So, it's still it's not a warm pattern, but again, it's warmer than it was a few days ago. Okay. Now, as we get into that 16 to 30 day range, again, the big story is going to be, how does this block hand off? We're lessening the block in Greenland. We're gaining some blocking in Alaska by the middle of December. And here's the European or the GFS weekly interpretation of it. See, right around the turn of the month, the 3rd, 4th, 5th, we lose that block near Greenland. We get the trough in the west. However, we see the block kind of back in to central Canada and eventually near Alaska, which would reinforce some colder risk at times. And you see that here, blocking near Alaska and even a little bit of blocking lingering near Greenland. This would yield a colder look, no doubt. Now, alternatively, the European weeklies, which admittedly the performance has been suspect so far this season, if we're being honest again, the European weeklies kind of do the same thing. Through the first week or so of December, we have the block diminishing, but it's still there near Greenland. And as we head towards the middle of the month, notice how the blocking vacates Greenland and heads towards Alaska, and a small ridge tries to form in the southern U.S. That would allow for some colder air to enter into the northern plains and continue to try to traverse the northern tier of the United States through the middle of December. So it's not a warm pattern necessarily, but I think we have to be aware that looking at this in the 16 to 30 day, you see that the southwest is pretty warm. The southern plains could be pretty warm. And how much of that enters the eastern U.S. is going to be a very important question we need to answer. But for now, even our warmer data still suggests the northeast and the northern tier have near to even some below normal temperature risk here into the middle of December. So what does that mean for our 16 to 30? Well, we kind of took a hedge in between. Given the uncertainty, we leaned warmer south and west, and then colder for the northern tier in parts of New England and the Great Lakes. But again, warmest to the south and west. And the thing here is, if this even moves a little bit further northeast, we're in a pretty warm national pattern. But if it escapes southwest and a little bit more cold comes in, this turns colder fairly quickly for the national profile. So it's going to be an important thing to watch here. Last thing I wanted to touch on here, looking at El Nino, La Nina status here. We are in a La Nina. We are almost 1 Celsius below normal. So we can look at what the flavor of that yields. This is a stronger La Nina. A lot of western troughing, and the result is cold in the northwest, but the rest of the country is not that cold. A weaker La Nina, which is what we're seeing, we're kind of getting some of this flavor now with some of the ridging in the west and near Greenland, and that opens the door for a at least some colder risk at times. And that's kind of closer, in my opinion, to what we're seeing here for November and into early December. So it's important to note that the magnitude of La Nina matters, and we are in a weaker La Nina, and that would potentially open the door for colder risk versus a stronger La Nina alternative. So All of this is to say there's a lot of funky things going on behind the scenes. For now, we're keeping it close to status quo with, again, the coldest risk in the Northeast and along the northern tier. Have a great weekend, and we'll be back Monday with another video.